Welcome to the Creative and Ambitious Entrepreneur Podcast.
My name is Jen Clarke.
And I'm Elke Clarke. We are a mother-daughter team who started our Zazzle e-commerce businesses over 10 years ago and have sold $15 million and counting of products on Zazzle with our designs on them.
We had so many people asking us how we did this, so we created our signature course, the Profit by Design Academy, which teaches our 5 strategies for success on Zazzle.
When we aren't helping creative entrepreneurs just like you create profitable e-commerce businesses, we love cooking food from places all over the world that we've traveled to, jet setting to our next dream destination, spending quality time with our close friends and family, or having fun creating our next bestsellers in our Zazzle businesses.
In this podcast, we share actionable steps you, the creative, can take to make money in your e-commerce business on Zazzle. Each episode will take you one step closer to achieving freedom with your time, location, and finances.
We believe that you can have anything you dream of, as long as you work smarter, not harder. And we're here to give you the tools you need to make your dreams happen. Let's get started. Hey there, it's Elke.
And Jen, and in this episode of the Creative and Ambitious Entrepreneur Podcast, we're going to talk to you about the checklist that you need when creating a Zazzle product.
And this is a cool checklist because if you don't have all of these things done on the checklist, then unfortunately you're going to be missing out because your product's not going to be effectively published and be able to be used by the customer to add their customization, for example, and then add it to the shopping cart, because that's always our main objective, is to get that customer to say, yes, add it to my cart, and then put their credit card down so that we can say, hey, here's my royalty for that. I got paid, ka-ching. And we like the word ka-ching because we know that there are certain things you need to do in order to just make sure that the best possibility is there for the customer to get to the finish line, which is the cart, and adding their credit card so that they can get the purchase done, and then our royalty gets paid out to us. And so that would be the same for you. Now, the most important thing though is that you have to understand that there is no customer interaction. So we have to do, as Zazzle designers, we have to do some very important steps, which seem like almost as if they're meant to be done so that we can post on Zazzle, but they're really meant to be done to make sure that the customer has the best buying experience possible. And so today we're going to go through the logistics rather than the design or the titles and tags, but literally the logistics to make sure that those, things that we don't even really pay attention to are actually done correctly so that you don't miss out on sales and have what's called cart abandonment.
Yes.
And that's something that we're so passionate about because a lot of cart abandonment happens, and we want to minimize that so that we can increase our profitability. And that way we can hit all those pillars, which we talk about all the time, which are perceivable, passive, profitable. And so let's get started with the checklist. Do you want to start us out?
First of all, I want to make sure that everybody is signed in to their Zazzle account, because I have definitely made this mistake many times, and some of our students have as well, where they go through all of the motions of creating an amazing product, and they want to post it for sale after they've done everything, and then all of a sudden they realize that they can't because they're not logged in.
I know, I'm laughing because I've done that even now after 13 years, and we still do it. It's like, oh darn it, I haven't logged in. I have to redo the whole thing, or at least move it from my saved products and put it in as for post for sale. It's funny. And we all think, okay, is there a tech issue?
I know. We create these crazy stories thinking that something's wrong when it's really just as easy as logging in. So,
So that's number 1 for sure. What's number 2?
You go for number 2.
Oh, number 2. Okay. Picking the right product. And this may seem really crazy because what do you mean? Of course, I'm going to pick a t-shirt or whatever.
Picking the right product is very, very important. And the reason why we say that is because there are so many different options for certain products on Zazzle. And as you said, you can say, I want to just make a t-shirt. But how many different products actually include t-shirts? There are so many different styles, so many different sizes, different quality types, different cuts as well. And so you really have to decide which product you want to choose. And you can look through them obviously in the create all your own on Zazzle. There's an option where you can see all the products listed.
Yeah. So that for some products, it's pretty easy. Just make sure you pick the right style so that you're choosing the right product to merchandise your design on, right? That's the reason for doing that. But then in certain situations, Zazzle's gone really deep into helping the customer find products. So they've created some layers within certain areas, like paper products, for example, where the paper, it might be the exact same piece of paper, the exact same size, the exact same type of like material, but it's used for a different use. And they've segregated them out to be used for thank you cards or RSVP cards or occasions or sympathy or holiday. And all of these different uses are actually listed in that create your own or start from scratch area where you have to pick that first. Otherwise, you'll have the wrong paper product, even though it's the same product. And that might confuse people, but it's part of what they call the paper breakout. And they're doing that for more than just paper. They're going to implement that for other things. But at this point in time, especially when you're using and making paper products that are to do with occasions, you're going to have to be much more careful as to the product that you're choosing has to literally be also chosen in that department tree based on the usage that you're going to post the product for sale with.
I just want to jump in and say that I'm sure you probably have seen that, for example, Zazzle has different cards available for just flat cards, and then there's another one called a holiday flat card. And the reason why they've done this is because specifically for holidays, they do offer this for other paper products as well, but they've realized that so many people were creating certain flat cards for holiday themed purposes, but they were getting mixed and matched and jumbled in with the other search results because sometimes Zazzle designers weren't tagging them properly.
Well, also just like that I would have put them in with weddings and birthdays and whatnot. They wanted to give the customer a better buying experience so that if they then just search for the word holiday cards, because as Jen said, they weren't being labeled properly by the designer, then they weren't being found by the customer. So now the paper product itself has now like a little tag attached to it already. So that if someone says holiday card, that paper product comes up even if you don't title and tag it properly, which is kind of fun.
Yeah, so that's what I wanted to get to, is that even if you don't use the title or the tag holiday card or put anything specific to holiday in, if you've chosen that holiday type product paper type, then the product has those like algorithm tags attached to them already so that you'll be able to be found in the proper search results for your holiday card. And Zazzle is deciding to do this with multiple other products as well, but they recently did this with the paper products because there were such quantities of paper products that weren't being found properly by the customers because of the way that they were presented in the search results.
So logging into your account, first of all, so you can make the product and post it for sale. So you have that option. And then choosing the correct product based on what it is that it is in the first place for either marketing reasons and even sometimes price point reasons. With regards to t-shirts, you may not want to put out a sweatshirt. You want to make a t-shirt first. That's a lower priced item, and then the customer can move it to a sweatshirt if they want. But then the other thing is all related to what Zazzle's now done with the paper products, where they've literally divided them up, even though it's the same actual physical product, that they've moved it into different uses. And so you have to pick the product initially. It becomes literally a different product based on use. And so make sure you do that. So we've only gotten to the point of picking the product. So what's next, Jen?
When you've now designed your product that you've chosen correctly and you think everything is all great in terms of the actual design elements that are in the product, we want you to make sure that you are using the bounding boxes properly, because you don't want to post a product for sale with your design elements or your graphics outside of the bleed lines or inside the bleed lines, because when the person who purchases the product receives the end result and there are either blank spaces or the printing isn't done properly because you've actually gone above and beyond the bleed lines, then your product is going to get returned, and we don't want that. So on the Zazzle design tool, you'll see certain colored lines on the actual template, and you want to make sure that you're within the green lines for anything that's going to be printed with a specific specific text. Because you don't want, for example, the customer to come in and change the text or keep what you have there, but have it printed incorrectly outside of the green lines.
Yeah, it's interesting though, because Zazzle does print beyond the green line. There's a green line, and there's a blue line, and then there's a red line.
Yeah.
And so the red line indicates the actual outside where nothing beyond that will show. But then there's a blue line that says, hey, you know what, if you have something really
it's like a pattern, I think, more so,
patterns.
Or a color background, because it is part of the actual printing process, but they don't know, you can't guarantee if it's going to be cut off or not.
Yeah, so we always advise you to stick in within the green line for anything that has to do with text.
Yeah.
Even though the pattern or surface pattern or background is going to go over the entire surface space as long as you're outside or at least to the red line. So there's also another thing about, you mentioned it earlier, bounding boxes, which is different than the outside guidelines that Zazzle has on each product. What is the
bounding boxes? Yeah, when you're creating a text-based design or adding text to your design, you want to make sure that the actual box that blocks out that space for the text goes to the green lines. And when you add text, I think it automatically does that for you, where it bumps it out to the green line. However, when you change the size or if you move the text around, sometimes you have to adjust that and make sure that it goes to the green line. And that's as easy as dragging the corners of that dotted line space that's around the text to the edge. The reason why we want you to do this is because if you're using a template, which we'll talk about in a couple moments, you want to be able to make sure that the customer, when they change the text or change anything within that text box, that the text stays within that line and confined so that it doesn't actually bump out over the bleed lines, which we just spoke about.
Or the second line.
Or the second line.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, for example, let's say we have a name and we have the name Jennifer, and we want to make this a template so that any customer can come in and change the name Jennifer to their own. You want to make sure that the text bounding boxes to the green line, because if they have a longer name than Jennifer, or if they decide to put their first and last name in, then the text will actually make sure that it bumps it down and becomes part of the lower part of the design, rather than bumps it out and it puts it towards where the printing might not be proper.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It is confusing because we want to make sure that if it's supposed to be on one line, like Jennifer, or someone now has a longer name than Jennifer. By the way, that's the name that we always use on our list. So if you see lots of Jennifers, is because, customers or other designers are now taking our like trends that we've created, which is kind of fun. But make up your own name, by the way, because that way you'll stand out and you won't be like associated with our brand, which is like a sad thing. You want to have your own brand.
Yeah.
But so there's two things here. First of all, we want to make sure that the customer's text doesn't go beyond the bleed lines and gets cut off.
Yeah.
But we also want to make sure that if you use the Jennifer as an example, and the customer name is longer than that, then it's allowed to expand beyond the word Jennifer to still go as far as the green lines, right? So there's those two aspects of it. And of course, like Jen said, then if it's longer than that, then it'll bump it down to another line underneath it automatically, rather than it just being cut off or being outside of the space where the product will get printed.
Yeah. So make sure that your bounding boxes are always towards the green line. And as you said, if you want to make sure that the name that you choose is always on one line rather than it being on multiple lines, then make your font size a bit smaller in case someone adds a longer amount of characters within that text box, so that they still have space to use, which is around that horizontal bar until the green lines.
Yeah, we see a lot of designs that have the one name like almost to the edge, if not past the edge. And so if a customer has even one letter more, then unfortunately they're not going to be very happy. They're going to leave and you won't know about these things because you are not going to see that they, bought it and returned it. They're just going to see already visually on the Zazzle marketplace when they add their name that it's not going to work. And so they're just going to abandon the cart. So a lot of these things that we're teaching you today in this podcast is all about things where you don't even know it's happening, but as the reason why you're losing sales. So it's really important to just remember these things right off the bat to make sure that you avoid them and don't miss out on those potential sales.
Yeah.
Have you heard about our newest program, the Z Supercharger, yet?
Are you a new or current Zazzle designer who's overwhelmed with what to do, frustrated with lack of sales, uncertain about what works, feeling icky about selling, and unsure how you can generate consistent sales in your Zazzle business?
The Z Supercharger is a brand new, never before offered way for you to receive consistent critiques from Zazzle experts on your designs, titles and tags, store categories, and collections. Increase your power to get to consistent 5K months faster on Zazzle with the Z Supercharger, which is specifically created to help you improve your design, SEO, and marketing skills.
This critiqued-based program is perfect for you if you want to receive feedback from us, Jen and Elke Clarke, on your designs, titles and tags, store categories, and collections as you populate your Zazzle store to increase your power to get to consistent 5K months.
Head over to the show notes to grab the link and we'll see you in the Z Supercharger. Now let's get back to the show.
Okay, so talking about templates, you want to go into
Yeah,
templates?
we can talk about templates.
Okay.
So a lot of designs on Zazzle, as you can see, are customizable, and that's one of the main reasons why we love Zazzle so much, is that you can create one product and it can be customized for like an infinite amount of potential customers. And so we love making template products, but you have to make sure that you always make them properly, because if you make a template product, or you think you're making a product that has a template and you actually don't, then you're going to have customers shy away from purchasing your product, because a lot of customers don't actually know how to get down to the design tool like level of customization. They're just looking for an easy way to customize and, change their name and click one button and say buy.
Yeah.
A lot of customers don't go into the design tool and realize that they can change all the elements in the design.
Especially now that so many people are on mobile.
Yeah.
And that's still an opportunity for the customer, and Zazzle does have that in place, but it's going to still be an extra step, and it'll be like a little bit overwhelming probably for the customer. And why don't they just fill out the spaces that are there for them with the customized templates, and then that way they're all happy.
Yeah.
And that's what the secret is, again, to getting more sales, is to make sure the customer's happy. And so templates are super important to get right.
Yeah. So when you're creating a template, let's say you put a name in, and let's say another name. So let's say Mary Jane, because I'm going to make a new trend. If you put in the name Mary Jane or any other name in a text layer in your product, you want to make sure that on the right-hand side, when you have that layer selected in the design tool, you scroll down to the bottom and you say, make this layer a template object. And you want to make sure that that's clicked. As soon as that's clicked, the little toggle will slide over and it'll be from a gray button to a blue button. And then on your left-hand side where you see the layers and you see that text layer, at the top, it's actually going to have another section that says text number 1 or text number X, because as depending on how many templates you've decided to add to your product, you'll see them all listed there in chronological order with the numbers. You want to make sure that that toggle is switched over, and you can always do a little bit of a design check to make sure that your template is working. You can click the done button when you're in the design tool, and your product, the preview will pop up because you actually haven't posted it for sale yet, and you'll be able to see that now on the actual product page, there's a little drop-down menu or a button that says personalize or customize this product. And when you click on that, you'll see actually a pop-up or a drop-down that says the name that you've entered in, and then the text box where you can actually change the name to something different. When you change the name to something different, you'll be able to see that it's actually reflected in the preview. So you know that the template's working. Then you can go back and you can say edit again if you still have to add elements to your product which you're working on.
Yeah, and I like that because what I do then is I add like letters, extra letters to the name that I've put in as my sample name, and kind of go as far as I can to see how many more letters could I add before the text starts to get bumped down to the next line, and all kinds of things like that, so I can see literally whether my bounding box is done correctly. And of course, if the template field isn't there, then obviously I didn't do my template properly. But if it is there, then the next thing to do is double check that I've set my boundaries for the text properly with the bounding boxes, and also how it looks online. Maybe I don't want to set my boundary boxes all the way to the green lines. Maybe I want to set it a little bit closer so that it's centered and or in a certain space, because maybe I have some extra design elements that are actually near the green lines, but if I had the text going over top of my design elements, then it wouldn't look so good. So keep that in mind as well, that your bounding box doesn't always have to go to the green line. And based on how you look at the preview and you're adding the extra letters to see how far your text can go before it doesn't look so good, then that's how you're going to be able to decide how to adjust where the bounding box ends on either side of the left or right of the template for that particular text.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's text. What about images?
Well, images as well, you do the same process where you're clicked or you have that layer selected and you want to make sure that it's a template. And when you click on the template option with photo, there will be a couple options for you to choose in terms of how the customer's photo, when they are changing that template photo for their own, will fit within the space of the photo that you've chosen. So for example, if you've put in a horizontal, like a horizontal photo, then your customer, if they put in a horizontal photo as well, it should fit within that horizontal photo. But if their customer comes in with a vertical photo, if they come in with a different size photo, then you want to make sure that the photo they're choosing still fits within your design space that you've chosen for your image, because quite often designers on Zazzle make designs that they're creating based on a certain size of a photo, right? Your design includes elements to make the product look good with what you have created. You don't want to create a different type of product with a different type of image because you would have done that. So,
Yeah.
But you want to make it as easy as possible for the customer to come in and put in their own photo and have it look good. Because a lot of customers who input a photo into one of your templates, if it doesn't look proper or it doesn't look pleasing, they're going to shy away from buying it, because why would they buy a product where the photo just looks absolutely horrible on your design? So I don't know if you want to touch on that, but
So the one thing that's really important is a lot of the tool on Zazzle now for designing is so robust and has so many features that you can actually even take your sample photo and crop it to the size that you want it to be on Zazzle. So that's where a lot of people get confused, is whatever's showing is what the photo will, and where you've placed the photo on the actual image or surface area that you're designing on, that's where the photo will ultimately be replaced with the one that the customer uses.
Yeah.
But only if you actually choose the word fill.
Yeah. So
fill,
when you
fill.
When you click on the template toggle to create the photo as a template, there are 3 options there. It says fit, fill, and none. And you want to make sure that you click the box or the button fill, because that means that the customer who inputs their own photo, it will fill up the space of the box that you've created on your template of what the photo is.
Where the photo should be. And so that eliminates us having to do like an overlay so that it covers up the photo and all this stuff, but it also makes it a little bit more complicated, and it definitely turns into a big mess if we don't choose fill as the selection along with creating it as a template.
Yeah, and the reason why I gave you the explanation about the horizontal and vertical photos is because, for example, if you used fit or none, then if you had a vertical photo and someone put in a horizontal photo, then because it says fit, it's going to be fit within the vertical space. And so you're actually going to have a blank space on the top and bottom because it's fitting the horizontal photo in and squishing it down so that the actual outsides are the same where the vertical photo is, if that makes sense to you. But so you always want to make sure that it says fill, so it fills the whole space that your image template has.
Exactly. Or if it says none, then it's like all over the place. It could be everywhere. Like the whole customer might just be totally confused.
Yeah.
Not just frustrated because it doesn't show the way it needs to show. So again, all of these things are being done specifically to make sure that the customer does not have any issues with getting to that finish line of putting it in their shopping cart and saying yes and putting their credit card down. And that's what we want for you. So, okay, we've covered a whole bunch of things, right? We've said log in, make sure you pick the right product, make sure you stick within the boundaries of the design tool so that your stuff that you're putting in the design actually gets printed properly. Then you're going to use templates properly. What's next?
Well, you also
All
have the
the
text
design-
bounding boxes as well. We want to make sure because
Oh,
the
yeah,
bleed
yeah.
lines are different than the text bounding boxes too. But then in terms
Are we
of
now getting into the publishing part?
yeah, I think we're getting into the publishing part. There's obviously a lot more that you can check and do within the design tool that we go much more detail in the Profit by Design Academy. But these are the very basic and main checkpoints that you need to make sure that you've completed before you post your product for sale. Because as we mentioned, the whole reason why we're speaking about this is so that your customer buys the product in the end, because you don't want somebody to shy away from your product because of something very simple like not adding the template option to the text.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Exactly. And of course, the idea too is that you're doing all of this before, because if you publish that and you want to fix it, you can't.
Mm-hmm.
You can edit the text and you can edit some other things that we're going to talk about now, but you can't edit anything that we already talked about. You can't edit the design, change the templates, nothing. So you'd have to redo the product, which is unfortunate. It takes a lot of time, and it takes away from the profitability aspect of running a proper, perceivable, passive, profitable business.
Yeah. So once you think that you've got all of those check marks done on the list, then you can click the done button in the design tool and say publish for sale or post for sale. And the post for sale page will come up, and this is where you choose your title, your description, you add your tags, you make sure that it's in the right department tree, you add it to the right category in your store, and then you post for sale. You also can add your royalty and then make sure that it is obviously compliant with copyright law, that you're not copying anybody else's designs or that you haven't taken any images off the internet, etc. But in this page, you want to make sure that you do your title properly. You want to add a proper description. You want to make sure that it's in the right department tree. And department tree on Zazzle is where they use that information to categorize and place your product within their marketplace. And you'll see that it's automatically updated or generated once you start typing in your title, because there's a really neat algorithm that works with your title. So for example, if we're making let's say a wedding invitation, I know we talk about weddings a lot, but it's the easiest to explain. If you're using a wedding invitation and you start to type in the word wedding or save the date, the Zazzle algorithm will already register those words as the places where your product could probably be placed within the marketplace. And the department tree options that pop up will give you those spaces. So it'll give you a whole bunch of options based on your product type, first of all, and then also the keywords that you use in your title. And you can properly choose a department tree to place your product. Mm-hmm. And for anyone who doesn't know what department tree is, basically it's saying, okay, occasions, wedding stationery, wedding invitations, and then it bumps it down to the last level that they have included in their marketplace algorithm, and also the department tree. So they're basically like categories.
And that's not just for weddings.
No.
You have that for multiple other areas and departments that Zazzle has allocated all the products into, but that one's the most built out. Mm-hmm. So if you're doing it in the occasions and the wedding space, you're more than likely to see multiple layers that you go down deep into before you say, okay, that's it. Whereas some other places or other departments are not quite as built out yet. This is obviously always a work in progress. And so you might not have as many choices to make before you get to the point where it says, okay, this is it. Like for example, cell phone cases, basically just saying, okay, this is a cell phone case for the Samsung S8 or something like that. Then you're done. Whereas some other ones with the occasions and weddings, you're going deep and deep and deep, and you could be clicking a loop.
I think one of the last levels on the weddings is save the date coasters. So you've gotten down to such a specific spot on Zazzle because they found a need for an actual marketplace department tree for that, because they're popular and trending. So after that, you want to make sure that you have your description, like I mentioned, because you have to obviously give a little bit more information about what the design is. This is a space for you to elaborate a little bit more about you as the designer, why you chose this design, give a bit of a story to the background history, I want to say, of this product. And this is a really great space for artists and photographers or graphic designers to give some more information about you as the designer, so that you build up your brand, or that there's a lot of brand recognition with your product and you as the person who designed it.
Yes. Mm-hmm. And then the part where I mess up sometimes is I don't put my products properly in the store category. And that's next. Well, actually, there's a couple more things above that because Zazzle's still got some more department options.
Yeah,
So,
they ask you, who is this product for? Or where is this product placed? And this is also to help them categorize the product in their marketplace, but it's a little bit more about an occasion type or who the product is meant for. So it'll ask you, what's the, like, is it an everyday event? Is it an actual like holiday? Is it an occasion? So if you wanted to actually post a product for sale for Independence Day or for Halloween or for, you know, current events, there's trending current events that are happening, or if it's like everyday type of things like schooling, you know, driving,
yeah, anything.
like things like that. It's very specific. If you don't exactly know which event it's supposed to be for, you can just say everyday events or current events, or pick something very general.
Or don't go as deep down.
Yeah, or don't go as deep down, but pick something that describes it as best you can. Then the next part underneath it is, who is it for? And this is to help also Zazzle with their internal marketing, because sometimes, for example, for Christmas or for any sort of sale, they sometimes create a grouping of products that says best gifts for her or best gifts for him. And or bridesmaids. You'll see in this drop down menu where it gives you the option to actually move down the section. So you say, okay, it's for her. And then it says, is it a bridesmaid, a friend, a mother, a daughter, etc. So this is where you can actually really hone in and say, yeah, this gift is actually for somebody specifically, a mother-in-law or a daughter or a grandmother, etc.
Yeah, which is really important because all of these things, again, are here to help the customer, not to make your life miserable because you have to do this for every single product. It's for your product to get the best chance to be in front of the eyeballs of the customer that specifically is looking for these things. So make sure you fill these out as accurately as you can. And that's what sometimes happens, is we don't fill them out as accurately because we're getting lazy, or it's like the 50th product we've done in the day, and it's like, just is for her.
But it really helps.
Yeah, if we would have said for grandmother, we would have been in a much smaller category with our product or a niche area of search results that the customer could then easily find the product, and maybe we would have had a sale.
Yeah. So now store categories is underneath, and this is actually internally in your own store. And this is where you're going to place your product within your own back end organization. So you obviously want to create categories prior to posting a product for sale. And we're going to be talking about categories in another session or another episode of the podcast in more detail. However, you want to make sure that you're posting now your product for sale in a category that makes sense for your store organization and where you want to organize it in your store.
Yeah, we won't cover more of that now, but make sure you do put your product in the right category, because otherwise it's going to create work for you again later. And that again moves to the profitability. If you have to spend more hours fixing things because you didn't get to them while you were doing something that you should have just like clicked the button and said yes, then unfortunately you have more work, and you either won't find the products necessarily later, or that they're not there for the customer to find in your store categories, and that's going to be a shame because then they won't be able to buy.
Yeah, and so then after that are tags, and these are your keywords that you're going to use to describe your product, and you have 10 of them, and we will go into much more detail of that in another episode as well. But this is where you're going to quickly put in your tags to describe your product, because these are very, very important when it comes to searchability within the marketplace on Zazzle, and then also externally when people search on Google, for example, your product will also be found and you can increase your sales through that. So if you are tagging your product incorrectly or not as efficiently as you can, then you're actually potentially losing out on sales and going above and beyond cart abandonment. Your product actually won't be found in the first place.
Yes, exactly. Okay, so then there's a couple more things. You have to do things like say whether it's G-rated or adult or PG-13, which you can do yourself. There's also a couple of options where you're going to let the customer be able to customize the product, as well as there's two there that are kind of similar, but just check them and say yes to both of them, because you want to give yourself the most opportunity to have the customer do something with your designs the way they want it, so that you're not going to miss out on your commission or your royalty. You're just not going to be able to get that sale if you don't allow the customer to do what they need to do with it. Now, if you're very specific about copyright and usage of your signature artwork and signature photography, then definitely you don't want the customer to be fiddling around with your stuff. So then you would mark those as a no, that they can't change things. But otherwise, hey, weigh the differences for yourself and realize that more than likely, if you keep those as a no and the customer can't customize, then you're going to lose out on those sales. Okay, so are we getting to the royalty?
Yeah, I think we're now at the royalty, and this is where you can add in a percentage amount that you want to earn as your earnings. And we recommend between 10 and 14.99%. I know that's an odd number, but we'll get more into detail in that, or we do get more into detail into that in the Profit by Design Academy. But it's basically so that you can compete within the Zazzle marketplace with the other designers so that your price point is not extremely high or extremely low compared to the other people who are selling. If you are an artist, a graphic designer, or a photographer, you can up your royalty a little bit because your products obviously, they have meaning to you. And or if you have a really strong brand recognition, you want to price your products accordingly. But just make sure that you don't make the mistake that I did when I first started out on Zazzle, thinking that I could make my royalty basically at 99%, thinking I want all of the money for me. I didn't realize that the price point of the product actually increases as well. So I almost posted a cell phone case for about $2,000 at one point, and I realized I probably shouldn't do that. Yeah. So we do recommend.
It adds to the price, right? It doesn't just take more of the price.
I thought that's what it was. I was like, why would I only want 10%? I want all the percent. But no, it actually increases the price of your product. So we do recommend. I personally set all of my products at 10% unless it's something special or a custom order. But we do say 10 to 14.99% for a royalty.
Yeah, and you can go higher than that, but when you go higher, then you give Zazzle a little bit of a clawback fee. And so that's something you have to look at in the user agreement and see if you like the math as to what it is when you decide on what the royalty is. So the last part about that is, don't forget, Jennifer and I have made over $1.5 million of take home using 10% as our royalty. We have some things that might be a little bit higher, like 10 or like 11 or 13% once in a while, but mostly everything at 10%. And then that has worked so well for us. And when you first start, you think, oh my gosh, I'm wasting or losing money when you do that. But unfortunately, that's not the mindset you want to be in, because you want to be competitive and then also deliver products that people want to buy. Yeah. And so there's a nice balance between designs as well as the price point. Yeah. And this is how you can be very competitive with the price point. Yeah. Okay, so are we finished?
Yeah.
We can publish?
You can publish that. Well, you have to, there's a checkbox that says, I agree to the terms. My product is not in violation of copyright.
Yeah, and let's speak to that for 2 seconds.
Yeah. Okay, so you definitely need to make sure that the product you're posting for sale is 100% your own creation. And you can definitely be influenced by trends, by specific colors or things that are trending in the marketplace on Zazzle or in the outside space, like let's say on Google or any other popular venue. However, you cannot not copy other products on Zazzle, because those are people who are designers just like you. And even if you've taken their concept and you've tweaked it slightly, that's still not okay, because that's basically taking their idea that they've worked really hard at creating and you just copying it because you think that it'll sell because it's trending. This is a big problem that's happening on Zazzle, where there are designers like myself and like Elke who have worked really hard to create a specific design, and that design actually has made us a lot of money. And designers who are new and seeing that things are popular and coming into this online space on Zazzle think that if they just copy our designs or other people's designs on Zazzle, that they'll start making money as well, because that's what's trending and what's popular. We want you to be very authentic and unique with your designs, because each designer, you're capable of creating beautiful and amazing creations that will sell within your niche. And if you are playing this, I want to almost say a game where you're saying, oh, it's trending or popular, so I'm just going to copy it really quickly because I'll make really fast money. That's actually hurting your brand and hindering your reputation on Zazzle, not to mention actually against the law. And some designers have been taken off Zazzle completely and had all of their designs removed, not just that one that they copied. So if you've spent a lot of time building up your Zazzle store and you make the mistake of copying somebody very similarly, you are in violation of the law, and then also you're at risk. That's my word. You're at risk
losing everything.
Yeah, at risk of losing everything.
Yeah, honor yourself and honor your own worthiness. Definitely, like if Like, for example, right now, like the really fun rustic designs are always popular with lace and with wood and string lights and garden lights and mason jars. And so those concepts are there, and that's good. But then the actual design and how it's put together and the wording and the text portions of the designs, that's something that some designer has come up with, and they've made it uniquely their own. And that's why they're making money off of that now. Whereas you can't just come in and grab that.
Yeah.
That's a blatant violation. That's totally against the law. But since Zazzle is the space where everyone is supposed to be acting respectfully, that's one of the reasons that you have to tick that box every time that you post a product for sale. It's not a meaningless thing that you just have to tick. It's actually something where you are agreeing by law that you are really truly not using someone else's design, and that you have full and utter commercial right to use that. And if you are doing that and not realizing it, then it's a really good time for you to say, hey, I really shouldn't be doing that. I didn't realize that that was so serious.
Yeah.
So, okay, so that's it. We click that button, then we say yes, post, and we are good to go. So here you have your checklist.
Yes, it's a long checklist, but it's an easy one to go through. And remember, if you listen to this episode again, as well as just make sure that everything is proper, because we don't want you to lose out on potential sales. We don't want that cart abandonment, or we want your customer to be able to find your product, because if you don't have everything properly done with the department tree and your titles and tags, then you don't actually even have a chance of selling either. So the 2 parts, designing and posting the product for sale, are very, very important, and make sure that you follow that checklist.
So thank you so much for listening and watching, and we'll see you in another episode.
Bye.
Thank you so much for listening to The Creative and Ambitious Entrepreneur with Jen and Elke Clarke.
We hope this episode has given you actionable steps to start and scale your Zazzle business so that you can have the passive online income to have location and time freedom to live your dream life.
If you've enjoyed this episode, please take a minute to subscribe, rate, and review the podcast. Each review helps us reach more creative entrepreneurs like you working to create a profitable e-commerce business.
And don't forget to take a screenshot and share it on your Instagram stories and tag us at Miss Jen Clarke and at Elke Clarke. We'd love to hear your biggest takeaways from today's episode. See you back here next week.